What's up guys, Eric Vasquez here with a brand new tutorial for you today from designcuts.com. In this tutorial we'll be creating a cinematic movie poster in Photoshop. To do this we will be using one style of the Versus typeface from Latino Type, which is part of the Essential Versatile Font Collection. This all-new font bundle has been meticulously handcrafted, so whether you're working on a website, branding, social media, or a poster project, this collection has you covered. In addition to this typeface, we'll also be working with a handful of free stock photos from Unsplash and a free movie poster credits template from Studio Binder. We will then bring all of these elements together and composite our image to create an ultra cool poster. So if you're all ready to smash some box office records, let's get started on our feature film poster design in Photoshop. Now to get started, we're just going to go ahead and create a new document, and we want to make it 11 by 17 inches. Now I'm just going to go ahead and give my document a name. I'm going to call it Ultra Movie Poster Design. You can set the resolution to 300 and leave the color mode to RGB because we will mostly just be viewing this on screen. And then you can leave the background content set to black and click Create from the lower right corner. Now once you create your new document, come down here to the adjustment layer icon and add a solid color adjustment layer. Now all we're going to do here is make a solid black adjustment layer, and then we can go ahead and delete the background layer. Now go back to the adjustment layer icon and add a second solid color adjustment layer, and this time we're going to enter the hex value 3A0B18, which is this nice sort of deep red color, and we're going to be placing that on top of our solid black adjustment layer. From here, come up to the view menu and make sure that your rulers are turned on, and let's also make sure that the snap setting is checked off. Now once you've done that, click over here on the left side to click and drag a guide out into the middle, and it should snap into place, and then do the same from the top, dragging down to locate the horizontal center of the design. Now what we want to do here is select the layer mask on our Color Fill 2 adjustment layer, and then press G on the keyboard to switch to the gradient tool. And now once you've done that, we're going to select a radial gradient that fades from solid to transparent. Now if you're seeing a color other than black in here, all you need to do is press D on the keyboard to reset your default colors, and then press X on the keyboard until black is your foreground color, and you should see that update here as well. Now before we continue, we also want to go ahead and check off this box that says reverse, and from here we're going to click our cursor in the middle and then click and drag outwards from the center. So now we've basically faded this red color so that we have a nice vignette around the outside. Now from here, let's go ahead and create another new layer. Press G on the keyboard to get our gradient tool if you don't already have it selected, and then press X to toggle your foreground color to white. Now check off the reverse option up top here and click and drag outwards from the center of the canvas. Now doing this will create a white radial gradient in the center of the image, which then we will change to overlay for the blend mode, and then press the number 3 on the keyboard to reduce the opacity to 30%. So you now have this layer which we'll just call Overlay 30%, and that creates a nice little highlight in the center. Now press Command, Control, and the semicolon to hide the guides, and then Command, Control, and R on the keyboard to hide the rulers. From here, let's go ahead and add another adjustment layer. This time we'll add a levels adjustment layer, and I'm just going to move this left slider in until it's set to around 15 or so, and then reduce the opacity of this layer to about 20% by pressing 2 on the keyboard. Now once you've done that, select the top levels adjustment layer, hold Shift and select the bottom black color fill layer, and press Command Control G to put them all into a group folder. Double click the Group 1 text and call this folder Background. Now come up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded, and what we're going to be doing here is importing our first free stock photo. While these images are not a part of the freebies for this tutorial, you guys can find the links for these downloads in the written portion where you can download them all and save them to a folder. So once you have done that, we want to then bring in this first portrait image here, this nice profile shot of this guy here, and then we're going to choose Place. Alright, so once we have this open here, let's go ahead and scale it way up, just dragging outwards while holding the Shift key. And we want to make this almost the width of the entire canvas here, because this is going to be the focal point of our image here. So click and drag outwards while holding Shift or Alt Option and Shift to scale that up quite a bit. Alright, somewhere about there looks pretty good. And then once you're happy with the size and placement, press Return or Enter on the keyboard to apply the changes. Now press W on the keyboard to switch over to the Magic Wand tool, and up here in the tolerance area, you want to leave it fairly low. So let's leave it set to around 12, and then you can just begin to sort of click on these areas in the background here to select it. Now you may have to hold down the Shift key and continue clicking a few times just to make sure that you get the background, but it should do a pretty nice job with just the Magic Wand. Alright, so it may be a little tricky up here in the hair, but you've gotten most of it and it looks pretty good. Alright, so maybe grab one or two more areas of the pink background that you can grab. Okay, and then what we'll do is come up to the Select menu, choose Inverse, and then click on this Add Layer Mask icon from the bottom of the Layers palette. Okay, so you should now have a pretty clean looking selection, and we've just removed the background. But if you want to, you can always press B to get your brush tool, come into the mask with the mask selected, and then just use a solid black brush to paint out any of the areas that you don't want. Okay, or you can use white if there's an area that you want to bring back in. Okay, so from here I'll press Command-Control-J to duplicate this layer, and then come up to the Image menu and choose Adjustments, Shadows, and Highlights. Now over here in the settings, you want to make sure that your amount in the shadows is set to 35, the tone to 50, and the radius to 30. And under the highlights, the amount should be 0, the tone 50, and the radius about 30. Now what this is going to do is bring out the detail in the shadow areas or the darker parts of the image. Now this is a great trick that I use all the time if I have a photo or an image of somebody with dark hair and I want to bring the detail out in the hair, or if they're wearing like a black jacket or article of clothing and you want to see some of the detail there. So let's go ahead and do that with this profile shot. Now once you've done that, select the top copy, hold the Shift key and select the copy below, press Command-Control-G to put them both into a group folder, and double-click the Group 1 text to rename this folder Portrait. Now let's come back up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded once again, and this time we're going to select another free stock photo from Unsplash, working with these clouds here. And again, you guys will find the links for this as well as the other images in the written portion of the tutorial. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out here. Click and drag outwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys. Okay, and then we're going to scale this up quite a bit and position it somewhere along here on the bottom. Alright, somewhere about there looks pretty good, and then press Return on the keyboard. Now from here, with that layer still selected, hold the Alt Option key and click on the Adjustment Layer icon at the bottom, and now we'll click on the black and white adjustment layer and check off this box that says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask, then click OK. Just going to move my properties to the side for a second. Now select the Smart Object layer once again, come back down to the Adjustment Layer icon and add a Levels adjustment. Now I'm going to move the left slider in until it's set to around 43 to increase the shadows, and then select the white slider on the opposite side and move it inwards until it's set to around 219 or 220. Alright, so we're really just bumping up the contrast there. Now select the top black and white adjustment layer, hold the Shift key and select the main clouds image, and press Command-Control-G once again, double click this folder name, and we'll just call this Clouds 1. Okay, now with that whole folder selected, we're going to change the blending mode to Color Dodge, and then hold the Alt Option key and click on the Add Layer Mask icon. So once you do that, we've applied an inverted layer mask, which means that everything is hidden until we brush it back in. So it's sort of just the opposite of a regular mask where you're brushing with black to hide areas. So as you might have guessed, we're now going to brush with white over the areas we want to bring back in. Okay, so let's just go back for a second here. I'm just going to disable the mask so you guys can see this whole mask is filled with black. So if I come into this folder, we're basically going to position the clouds where we want them. Alright, maybe somewhere around here. Looks pretty good. Or you can even move it down a little bit more. Just play around with it a little bit, experiment with the size and placement. Okay. And now with that layer mask on, switch over to the brush tool, press B on the keyboard, make sure you have a solid white foreground color, and up here in the top toolbar, you want to have a large soft edged brush. So in order to do that, you can use the keyboard shortcut Shift and the left bracket key to make the brush softer, and then press the number 2 to drop the opacity down to about 20%. All right, so that's going to allow us to gradually brush in some of the detail here on these clouds. All right, so I'm just going to start clicking around here, bringing in some of these details. And if you need to, you can always just come back into that folder and reposition the clouds. Or an even easier thing to do is to hold the Control key and click on the layer mask, choose Disable Layer Mask, and then you can see the entire image. Okay, so if I zoom out, I can now move these clouds around even more. Okay, maybe somewhere around there. And then all you have to do is click on that layer mask again to enable it. Okay, so I'm just going to continue brushing with white a little bit more, just over a few areas of the image around maybe the neck and the mouth area over here, just to bring in some of these clouds and create a little bit of a nice atmospheric effect. All right, you don't want to overdo it. You don't have to go crazy with it, but we just want to suggest some detail here. Now let's press Command-Control-J to duplicate that whole folder. Hold the Control key and click on the layer mask, and now delete that layer mask. Double-click the Clouds 1 copy text and just rename this 2. Now I'm going to come inside here, and now let's reposition this next copy of the cloud. Now this time let's try placing this one higher up, maybe somewhere up here. Looks pretty good. And then press Return to apply the changes. Now again, hold the Alt-Option key and click on the Add Layer Mask icon. And then with that same large white soft brush, we're just going to begin brushing along the top of the image here and just click around to kind of see the parts of the clouds that you want to reveal. All right, so this is just sort of about experimenting, playing around a little bit, and just kind of making a subtle background here. Okay, maybe we can come back into the other one, bring some of the clouds in, or if you want to get rid of any of these clouds, simply press X on the keyboard to toggle your foreground and background colors and brush with black on the areas that you want to hide. Okay, you want to make that a little bit more subtle on the bottom here. But something like that is looking pretty good. Once you're happy with the size and placement of the clouds here, what we're going to do is actually put them into the background folder. So select Clouds 2, hold Shift, and select the Clouds 1 folders. And now click and drag into the background folder and place them just below that Levels 1 adjustment layer. Okay, so once you've done that, that's going to change the appearance a little bit. So now what we're going to do is select this portrait folder, and we're going to change the blend mode to lighten. Okay, so once we do that, you can see that our image has changed quite a bit. Okay, but we're just going to play around with this a little bit here and experiment with the way that this is looking. Okay, so I think what we're going to do here is maybe resize this overlay layer a little bit. I'm just going to shrink it down a touch. And now we can come back to our clouds folder and maybe remove some of it or bring some details back in. All right, just to get that looking a little bit better. All right, and then play around with the opacity of this levels layer here. Maybe I'll bump it up a little bit so it's at 30%. Okay, and then I'm also wondering if I should turn down the reds a little bit here, but what I think I might do instead is add a new layer mask. So again, I'm going to click on this mask here and delete it. Okay, and then I'll apply a new instance of this mask instead. Okay, so press Command-Control and the semicolon to turn on your guides again. Press D to reset your default colors and make sure you have a solid black foreground color. Check off this reverse box here, and now just click and drag out from the center. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is just create a little bit more of a balanced looking background. All right, and that's looking pretty good. All right, so you've got your portrait layer here set to lighten, and you've got your background with the levels, the clouds, the overlay, and the 2 solid fill adjustment layers. Now let's select the portrait folder, add a layer mask, press G on the keyboard, uncheck the reverse option, and then change it to a linear gradient. And with a solid black foreground color still selected, I'm going to click and drag upwards from the bottom here, just to fade out that bottom edge. All right, so now you should have a nice faded image on the bottom here. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is come back up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded. And now let's go ahead and select this bright neon sign image from the streets here with the guy standing in the foreground, which is one of our other images from Unsplash. And we're just going to choose Place, maybe size it up a little bit, not too much bigger. Okay, and then we'll just maybe move it up slightly here, and then press Return on the keyboard. Hold the Alt-Option key, click on the adjustment layer icon, and change this layer, and select a black and white adjustment layer. Check off the Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask option, and then click OK. Select the image again, and now add a levels adjustment layer. And we're just going to move this left slider in until it's set to around 39 or 40. All right, somewhere about there. Now we'll put all three of these layers into a folder, double-click the Group 1 text and call this City. And now change the blending mode of this folder to Color Dodge. All right, so you can already see we're starting to get some interesting looking blending of these two images happening. We're going to once again apply an inverted layer mask here, just like we did before. So with the City Group folder selected, hold the Alt-Option key and click on the layer mask icon, switch to a solid white color, and then with your low opacity brush, begin brushing in some of the detail here inside the shape of the head. Okay, and you can see that as you gradually build this up, you're getting this cool sort of almost double exposure type of effect. All right, and you're just bringing in different parts of the image. Okay, and I'm trying to leave most of the edges and around the eye sort of intact, right, because we don't want to interfere with that too much. But it's just about sort of finding a nice balance here. So I'm going to maybe hide some of this text at the top, maybe leave in a few of these characters. Okay, and that's looking pretty cool already. So once you've got something that you're happy with, let's come into the background folder and we can mess around with these clouds a little bit more. All right, I'm just going to turn them on and off for a second so I can see. And all I'm going to do is paint inside this mask and maybe hide some of these clouds in the Clouds 2 folder. All right, and then also take a look at Clouds 1 and see if there's any areas that you just want to dial back, or if there's any parts that you would like to push a little bit further. All right, but that's looking pretty good. Let's go to Clouds 1, maybe just dial that back a little bit more. And now what we can do is select the Overlay 30% layer, press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and now I can sort of scale that down a little bit by dragging inwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys, and I can sort of position it over or behind that neon sign there. Now if I were to bump up the opacity a little bit, you can see that we're getting a brighter and more intense looking effect. So here I think I'm going to leave it set to maybe around 60 or so, and that's really just going to push some of those highlights in the image. Now once you're happy with the way that's looking, let's come back up to the top City folder. Okay, and continue maybe just brushing and finessing this a little bit more just to create a nice looking blend here. All right, and then let's come back down to the adjustment layer icon at the bottom and add a levels adjustment layer to the top. And all we're going to do here is move the left slider in just a little bit until it's set to about 4 or 5, and we'll bring the right slider in until it's set to about 248. So just a minor sort of contrast adjustment that we're applying overall to the image. Now after that we'll apply a hue saturation adjustment layer, and for this we're going to set the hue to -180, all right, to change up the color here, and let's just go ahead and increase the saturation to about 12. All right, so we're changing the hue and boosting that saturation. That's already looking really cool. Now from here we'll come back down to the adjustment layer icon once again, and this time let's go ahead and add a gradient map. Okay, now over here in the properties, you guys will see this sort of white to black gradient. So go ahead and click on that. And now we are inside of the gradient editor. And this is where we're going to go ahead and change both of these colors. So let's start by double clicking on this white box in the lower left here. And we'll change that color to the hex value OA00B2. Click OK. And now double click on the solid black color on the opposite side, and change this to 00FF84. Okay, so we've got this nice sort of blue to turquoise gradient here. And now we'll go ahead and change the blending mode of this layer to pin light, and then drop the opacity down to about 40%. All right, so that's looking pretty nice. Now that we've kind of changed the color here, I'm going to go ahead and just play with the city here a little bit more. And like I said before, guys, you can come in here into the folder itself, press Command-Control-T, and you can sort of move this image around a little bit, play with the size and the positioning however much you want, all right, until you have something that you like. I think this is looking pretty good. I might make it a little bit larger. All right, somewhere about there looks good because I want to make this guy in the foreground just a little bit more prominent. All right, so now you guys can see what we have going here. I'm going to select this top gradient map layer, hold the Shift key and select the Levels Adjustment layer, press Command-Control-G to put it into a group folder, double-click the Group 1 text, and I will just call this Global Adjustments because it is affecting everything below this folder. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to go ahead and save your work before moving on. Now, once you've saved your work, click to add a new layer, press T on the keyboard to switch to the Type tool, and then click your cursor somewhere down along the bottom here. Now, I'm going to type out the word Ultra in all caps. All right, and to do this, we are using the Ultra style of the Versus font from Latino Type. But I should mention that in the full bundle, you guys will have access to several more styles of this font. It's a really nice, versatile font that'll really save you guys some time and look great in a lot of your different projects. So all I'm doing here is moving my cursor between some of these characters and tightening up the spacing by holding the Alt-Option key and tapping the left arrow to decrease the space, or Alt-Option and the right arrow to add space. But we don't really need to add space right now. We just want to create sort of even spacing between the letters here. Now I'll press Command-Control-A to select this entire line of text here, and then pay attention to the character panel for a moment, just so we can make a few changes here. So I'm going to scale this down to about 164 point, and then change the tracking here to -20, and leave the color set to white. Okay, so we're just going to place this over here, center it at the bottom here. And this is going to serve as our title. But let's customize this a little bit and have some fun with the text here. So come back up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded, and then go back to your folder where you have your 4 Unsplash stock photos saved. And this time we're going to open this cool gritty street texture and choose Place. Okay, and then just go ahead and press Enter or Return on the keyboard. Now hold the Alt-Option key and add a black and white adjustment layer. Check off the box here to use previous layer to create clipping mask. And then once you've done that, we're going to hold the Shift key and select both of those layers together, and then press Command-Control-E to merge them together. Press W to get your magic wand once again, and this time let's go ahead and change the tolerance setting at the top here, maybe to around 24% or so. And then we're just going to come down here to the pavement and maybe select an area of some of this dark gray concrete here. Just a small selection is fine. Come up to the Select menu and choose Similar. Okay, but that didn't really give me a great enough selection, so I'm going to try and select a different section of the image here. Let's maybe grab some of that, and then once again choose Select Similar. All right, and that's looking better. So we're just looking for a nice selection of some of this concrete texture along the bottom here. So once you've done that, return to the Select menu and choose Inverse. Then we're going to create a new layer, make sure that you have a solid black foreground color, and then press Alt-Option-Delete on the keyboard. And what that's going to do is fill this selection with solid black on the new layer. Now from here, press Command-Control-D to deselect everything, and now you can turn off that merged black and white texture layer. Alright, so while we have this top layer here, let's go ahead and rename this Texture. We're going to hold the Control key and click on the layer, and then choose Convert to Smart Object. This way we can resize it and reposition it and not have to worry about it getting messed up or losing any quality in the texture. Alright, now let's just press Command-Control-J to duplicate that one time, just so we have a backup copy in case we mess anything up. With this texture copy layer selected, I'm going to just position it over here on the right side and just pay attention to the way that this texture is sort of interacting with the first few letters of our title. All right, so you get these nice smaller kind of details in here. Some of these dots and looks like, dirt and grit positioned over the letters. And you can also maybe scale it down, just reposition it and play around with it for a minute to see what looks good. And what we're going to do now, once you're happy with the way that this texture is looking, is hold the Command Control key, click on the layer thumbnail of that texture copy smart object layer, and then turn off the visibility of that layer. Select that text layer, come up to the Select menu and choose Inverse, and now click on the Add Layer Mask icon. Okay, so you can see what's happened there. We've used the selection of the texture, inverted it, and then applied a mask. All right, so now you can see that texture inside of those letters there. Now turn the visibility of that texture copy layer back on, and we'll continue to do this for the remaining letters. I'm going to press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and then play around with the size and positioning of the texture over the next couple of letters here. Okay, so we can see how that looks. If you would like, you can also hold the Control key, choose Flip Horizontal, maybe just to change it a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to slide that over a little bit. Somewhere about there looks pretty good, and then press Return to apply the changes. Now once again, hold the Command-Control key, click on the layer thumbnail icon to make a selection, and then turn off the visibility of that layer. Now select the type layer once again, but because we already have a layer mask selected and applied here, we simply have to select it, change our foreground color to black, and then press Alt, Option, and Delete on the keyboard, and that's going to knock that texture out of the letters. Now once you've done that, press Command-Control-D on the keyboard to deselect everything, and you've added some nice gritty texture to your title. So speaking of title treatments, let's select that Ultra Text layer, hold the Shift key and select the top texture copy layer, press Command-Control-G to put it into a group folder, double-click the Group 1 text, and call this folder TT for title treatment. Now let's go ahead and add some more details to this. So the next thing I want you guys to do is to download the movie poster credits template and install both of the fonts that come with it. Now I'm just going to come up here to File, Open, and I'll just navigate to that folder just to give you guys sort of a glimpse of what I'm talking about. But inside of this folder here, once you download the template, you'll see you have two typefaces in here. So just install both of those because they work with this PSD that we are about to open. Okay, so once you've done that, choose Open here to open up the Photoshop file. And once that is opened up, you guys will have a couple of options here for some cool things that we can customize and select. So now that we have this poster open, I'm going to turn off this top layer here and just leave on the white text on dark background folder, and then we'll click here to expand it. And inside of this Content to Edit folder, the only one that I'm concerned with here is the billing block. All right, so I'm just going to move this tab to the side, open up my main document here, and then we'll click and drag this billing block folder into our main document. Okay, so this is really the only folder that we need out of here. So you can now close the movie poster template. We'll just go ahead and rename this. We'll call it billing block, all caps, just so it matches everything else. And then move it down here below the title treatment on the bottom. Okay, and then we'll scale it up by clicking and dragging outwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys. All right, so we just want to make it a little bit larger there. Now hold the Control key and click on the eyeball for the billing block group folder, and then choose No Color to remove that green color label. Now come inside of that folder, and let's just go ahead and we can delete these first three layers. So select them, get rid of them. There you go. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a free transform to make sure that snaps into place in the middle. Maybe just tap it down a little bit to give a bit of space between the title treatment and the credits. And then what we're going to do is zoom in here, and since you've already installed the two fonts that come with this, we should be able to modify the text here in the first line. So here I'm going to change this to Design Cuts Presents a DC production in association with DC Studios, and I'll just put my name in here, Eric Vasquez. And then let's go ahead and change this from movie title to the actual title of our movie here, which is Ultra. And you guys can customize any of this as little or as much as you want, but I just wanted to give you guys an example and show you how this works. Okay, so once you've customized that a little bit, let's just go ahead and double click on the building block group folder to open the layer styles. Let's apply a color overlay. Now click on the color here. Let's go ahead and change this to the hex value 0EC897. Go ahead and click OK, and then click OK once again. And you can see that we now have some effects applied. All right, and then we can zoom out a bit. Let's come up to the top here. We'll add another new layer. Press T on the keyboard to get our type tool. And using that same font, that tall, dark, and handsome condensed typeface, let's add a couple of names up here for the cast. So the first thing I want to do here is hold down the Shift key and type out the name Alexis in all caps. Press Return to come to a new line. And then type out Vanderbilt in all lowercase letters. So they'll still technically be, capitalized, but they appear a little bit smaller when you do lowercase versus uppercase with this particular font. Press Command-Control-A to select this entire line, and then come up to the window menu, and let's just open the paragraph panel. And here we're just going to make sure that our text is centered. You can also do that in the top toolbar here as well. Now, over here in the character panel, just take a quick look over here to make sure that your typeface is set to around, let's say 30.5 for the size. And then for the line spacing, let's go ahead and change that to about 31, and we'll make the tracking setting 68. And now I'm just going to do a free transform to sort of position this up here towards the left side a little bit. Okay, and then press Command-Control-J to duplicate it. Command-Control and the left bracket to move this copy below the original. Press Command-Control-T to do a free transform. Click, hold the Shift key, and slide this layer over. Now I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see as we just go ahead and change these next few names. So now type out the name Cassie in all caps. Select the last name and type out Lopez in lowercase letters. And then again, duplicate it, place it below, free transform, click and hold the Shift key to slide it over. And we'll now continue and add the name Jake in all caps. Change the last name to Thompson. And you guys can really put in any names that you want here. These are just the ones that I'm using for this demonstration and tutorial. But you want to end up with at least 4 or 5 names here just to kind of fill it out. Okay. Now what we're going to do is select that bottom name there, hold the Shift key and select the top name, and then up here in the top toolbar, you'll see that you have some align tools. So click on these 3 lines here, and then in the row that says Distribute, click on this one, that's the second one from the right, to distribute horizontal centers. And that's just going to make sure there's an even amount of spacing between each of these names. Now, with those layers still selected, press Command-Control-G to put it into a group folder, double-click on the Group 2 text, and just rename this folder Cast, and then press Command-Control and the right bracket to move it to the top of the layers. Alright, so at this point, what I want to do is maybe reduce the size of the portrait and the city just a little bit. So I'm going to select both of those layers, zoom out, press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and let's just reduce that a little bit, or maybe just move it down a bit. Okay, and then we can bring it in a little bit as well. Just click and drag inwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys. Okay, and then we can maybe tap it up just a bit. And if you guys get any of these weird lines, I don't know if you can see there's a faint line here just above the head. That's something in the portrait that we can just mask out. So select the layer mask on the portrait, press B to switch to your brush tool. Make sure that your brush is 100% opacity, which it is. Hold the Shift key and the right bracket to create a hard-edged brush. And then with a solid black color, click on one side of that line, hold the Shift key, and just sort of drag all the way across to hide it. Okay, and if you see any other little kind of strays in here, just go ahead and clean those up while you're at it, just so we can tighten up this selection a little bit more, because we were using the magic wand, which is not always perfect. All right, so we're cleaning that up just a bit. Okay, And now what we're going to do is select this little FX icon on the building block folder by clicking the Alt Option key, then click on the FX icon, and drag and drop it onto the cast group folder here at the top. And you'll see that we've now sort of transplanted that color overlay effect that we were using onto the cast names. Okay, so now go ahead and add a layer mask to that cast folder. Press G on the keyboard to switch to the gradient tool. And as long as you have a solid black foreground color selected with a black to transparent linear gradient, we're going to click somewhere down here below the names, hold the Shift key, and just drag upwards to fade them out a bit. Right, just to create a nice sort of gradient effect here that adds a little bit of depth to those names. And if you want to, you can come in here and maybe just space them out a little bit more. I'll select Alexis, then Cassie, maybe tap them over 2 or 3 times while holding the Shift key, and then select Peter, hold Shift and go the opposite way. Click while holding Shift to select Jake, and just click over a few more times while holding Shift. Now we can select the top group folder, hold the Shift key, and select the background folder all the way at the bottom. Press Command-Control-G to put all these layers into a group folder, and you can call this folder All Layers or Artwork or anything else you want, as it contains all of our layers and subfolders for this poster design. So that about wraps up our movie poster design in Photoshop. Now we did cover a lot of information here. I showed you guys how to do some pretty cool looking effects like double exposure techniques, some masking effects, and how to apply unique and interesting textures to your type. And hopefully these are things that you guys will be able to use in your own work. But let's not forget, this would not look as cool as it does without some of these great fonts here, including this Versus font, again from Latino Type, that you guys can gain access to in the full bundle. So there's still time to check out the Essential Versatile Font Collection, and as I mentioned, it will save you time and money with an amazing selection of high-quality, versatile, ready-to-use fonts. So go ahead and check that out, guys, and discover all of these amazing high-quality fonts that you'll be able to use in your work right away. As always, we would love to see what you guys do with these fonts and with these techniques in your own creation, so please go ahead and share that with us. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Eric Vasquez, and we'll see you next time.